right, let's hit go live. All right, we're just gonna wait a second so everyone's connected to the audio. All right, we're just gonna start. All righty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Becoming ProArtist. My name is Emma Jean Wilkins. I'm the product manager here at Sentient. Thank you for coming. We are here with Nick Stevens today. Just a reminder that this is an interview series for artists in the process of becoming professionals, to learn from others who've been there before, to hear their experience for inspiration and for encouragement. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for us to get to know our favorite artists. I'm happy to introduce my friend, Nick Stevens. I met Nick when Sentient was holding model nights, and he was one of the most consistent artists to come paint and draw from life. Nick's work includes drawing, painting, sculpting, model making, fabrication design, representational to abstract fine art, and some commercial work as well. I'm just going to pull up his Canva, and we're going to see some of his work. All right, here we are. Can you see this, Nick?
Yes.
Perfect. This painting in the pink with the yellow chair is one of my favorites. I am drawn to it so much, and I just found out that it's a small painting. I thought it was so much larger. I thought it was maybe 2 feet by 2 feet. I don't know. How big is this piece?
That one might be 7 inches by 7 inches.
Oh, it's so little. I love it so much. All right, so let's talk about some of your work here. I'm going to go back to the beginning. So we've got some representational work here. You started painting with a mentor, right? John Horges, is that right?
It's Horsch is how you pronounce
Horsch.
it.
Yeah. Okay.
So John Horsch is a landscape painter in Arizona and Idaho. He goes back and forth between his two places there, but I met him while I was in college in Arizona, and through my roommate. My roommate was friends with his daughter, and then we became friends, and I went over to their house and ended up spending some time like working with him and learning about landscape and color and just sort of seeing things differently than what you might normally see, so that they become better paintings.
Wonderful. All right, I'm just going to go to the next one. This is where I met you, is model night. What was kind of your direction with these? What got you interested in painting from life and having that consistency?
So I think I've always wanted to do this, but I did not do it for various reasons. When I was in college, I ended up dropping out of college halfway through and never did figure drawing stuff and drawing from life, and never had a class. And then 20 years later, decided that it was time to up my game and just really, I kept having these feelings that I wanted to be able to have more tools, like I guess more skill set to be able to express myself in various ways. And a lot of the ideas that I was having for work involved figures. And so what better way than to actually go to a live model night and start doing that. I initially started doing it at my house with a group of artist friends. We would have a portrait night once a month. I did that for about 5 years in my living room, and we had a lot of fun. It was a really good time. The only reason I stopped was because it just got hard to constantly schedule models and keep it going and just organize the whole thing. And so then that's when I started going to other ones that other people were organizing, so I could actually really, and the other thing that was hard about doing it at my house and being the host of that is that I felt like I had to kind of take care of all the details, make sure everybody was doing okay during the session, make sure the model was okay, keep everything in line. And I wasn't able to really just like dive deep into building my skill. And so I felt like I was not progressing as fast as I wanted to. So then I switched to going to other sessions run by other people. And then that's when I really pushed myself to just focus hard on getting better at figurative work.
Yeah, I totally understand that from our experience with Sentient. I'm going to go to the next page. This is kind of what we touched on earlier. This is your current kind of style of work, yes?
Yes, I mean, I do work It is current, yes, but I think the other ones are current as well. But this
Yes,
is
yes.
one. This is the style that I think the art world, especially here in Utah, knows me by. This is what I
Mm,
normally show at juried shows or
shows.
museums, things like that. So, um, yeah, that's my current style.
Wonderful. And then we've got kind of a religious series here.
Right. Which some of them do fit in my style. Some of them are a little more refined, like I've taken them to a different level of
Mhm.
intricacy, but I still feel like it fits into the same sort of style.
Yeah. And then you have some really cool work here, some different projects. Do you want to talk about this real quick?
Sure, yeah. So I met my friend Clark Schaefer back in 2008. I was working at an architectural sort of promotional firm here in Utah, and we would do renderings and models at this place. And two doors down in the same building we were working on was this guy named Clark who had his shop, and he was a guy who spent over 10 years in Hollywood doing visual effects and building models and blowing them up and doing all kinds of interesting things through the 90s on feature films. And we ended up, in the 2008 recession, we ended up working together on various jobs. And he started hiring me to be his number one guy to come in on jobs when he had the budgets. And so we were doing, some of these are movies that we've done locally. The sci-fi pictures were this show called Henry, and it was a local filmmaker doing a short film, and it was an amazing project. All of it was in miniature, and I got to build the sets and help paint everything. So I'm painting a spaceship built by a master model maker named Randy Cooper, who built that. And then with Clark, I've also done all kinds of big things, miniature things. There's in the bottom corner, there's a temple for the LDS church where there's cutaways, and it's all the miniature furniture. It down to, like, I think it was half inch equals a foot. Was it, no, it was not that. I can't remember the scale, but it's tiny. The chairs are like an
Yeah.
inch tall. And so, and then there's also on the bottom left, there's a sculpture there that Clark and I did for Brandon Sanderson, the author that writes fantasy books and is doing incredibly well in his career right now. And so that's installed in his office in his home. And it's
Wow,
very,
that's awesome.
very, very cool sculpture. I have not posted about that online. I need to do that soon. But it was featured in an article on Esquire magazine. So if you go to
Wow.
esquire.com and like search for the article on Brandon Sanderson, there's a even better shot of that aquarium sculpture that we did
Mhm.
in that article. So I've had all kinds of cool opportunities to work on TV commercials, films, conventions, displays, all kinds of intricate stuff, making models. And model making is fun because it involves not only like designing things and fabricating things, but you have to paint a lot of stuff. There's sculpture in parts of it too. And so it kind of fits with like the wide variety of things that I like doing, instead of just being stuck with just the one thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life kind of thing.
You have such a great knowledge of tools and how to use all sorts of mediums. Do you have a favorite?
Well, somebody asked me this at one of the drawing nights just last week. They're like, what would you do out of all of those things if you could just pick one? And I would say model making, for the same reason that I just described, is because it involves so many other things. I don't know if I could say that I have a favorite though, because I love all of them. And I kind of
Yeah,
bounce around between the various things that I do. Um,
keeps you balanced that way, so you're
does, but
not burnout.
yeah, but the one that's the most difficult for me is the style that is we were talking about as my current style, because for some reason there's something that's very difficult about coming up with a design out of nothing versus I have a live model in front of me and I'm interpreting that, or like a landscape when I'm out plein air painting and I'm interpreting that, because there's information there. There's kind of a goal and an intent, but with the others, there's a lot of tedious designing and experimenting that can tend to fail, and then it gets kind of frustrating, and I want to just like walk away and come
We
back.
had a question from our audience, and it was, go pull it up again. What kind of materials do you use for those works? Like what is the medium?
For which works? Sorry.
The abstract.
Okay. Yeah, so those are all paint. It's I get asked a lot about my techniques, and I tend to say, well, that's my top secret thing that I don't want to reveal how I do all of it. But it
Mhm.
is paint. I start out, and they're on panels. So I'll do like a plywood panel that has a cradle on it, and then either like a fabric glued on with gesso over the top. So I have a nice surface. And the reason I like a panel, whether it's like a hardboard or a plywood, is because I tend to sand and scrape, and I need a surface. If I'm like taping off things and masking off things, I need to have a surface that's rigid, and I need to be able to get
Durable.
a good seal on that masking so that I'm not having bleed through on all that line work and other things. And so um, that's why I use those kind of materials. But I'll start out with an acrylic base, because acrylic, for me, I know what it does really well. I experimented for years and years and years with just like messing around with all kinds of textures and patterns and seeing what things do. Um, and acrylic dries fast, so that allows me to like move quickly through the initial phases. And then if I need oil in certain spots, or like metal leaf, I'll do that towards the end. And it's usually in the form of glazes. So I'll take like liquid or other types of things. Generally, it's liquid. I use that as the main medium for doing oil glazes. So if I need like translucency with the color, that's my main go-to for that. And so you do just a little bit of pigment into the liquid, and then it's able to give you a nice, almost like a stained glass type effect over the top of
Wow.
what's already done.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'll do image transferring as well, depending on whether I want to draw it out, or if I need something that's too complex and I don't have the time. I'll do like an image transfer. So I'll use like a matte medium, like a liquid matte medium, either through Liquitex or Golden or something like that. And then you can put it on either magazine pictures or print it out like laser printed imagery. And then either the ink or the laser toner will stick to the clear um, gel medium type stuff. And then you can basically get water and take the paper off, and then it leaves the transfer with all of that other texture and color underneath. So those are some of my techniques on how I do that.
How long would you say this process lasts? A week, months, a
So it
year?
depends. Like, I mean, if I'm just messing around with like little ones that like on the wall here with these little 6 inchers, it'll just be little bits here and there, and it's only going to be like anywhere from hours to days, depending on what that is. And then, but like with some of those big symbolic religious pieces that I do, it's like months, where they'll go for months, but it may only be like several weeks worth of work. But I think on a couple of them, I've put in probably a good 2 solid months if I were to condense all my hours, like full time for 2 months on some of those, which
Mhm.
is a lot of time. And uh, I tend to shy away from the really, really big ones now that are more elaborate, just because of burnout can kind of happen in the middle of it.
Yeah. Let's ask more about your schooling. I know we talked about the plein air artist, but you did take some schooling. I think you got an associate's degree. Is that right?
I did, yeah, in graphic design. So that was something that I initially was interested in high school. I was doing, so I've done art my whole life, and
Mhm.
um, it started as a kid, but like I had a good junior high and high school. There were a lot of great classes. I took every single art class you could. I did AP art and scored really high on that test. I was the student body artist at my high school. It was like an appointed position within the student government. And so I was basically like the glorified logo and t-shirt and like event artist guy that did
Mhm.
murals and
Mhm.
everything. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot. And then in college, I started out at an actual university and took several of the core, like foundation art classes, drawing one, 2D design, 3D design, and sculpture classes. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I left Utah and went to California, toured all the art schools there, and realized I can't afford that. Like, I don't want to have debt for the rest of my life, and ended up at a technical school doing graphic design. Um, and and that was okay. Like, I don't know if it was really what I wanted to do, but it was kind of one of those things that was like, it's practical, so maybe I should do it, sort of thing. um And then I ended up doing graphic design for a little while after that, but then quickly went right back to art. And so then my education became self-directed at that point, where I was just experimenting, like I mentioned earlier, for years and years. I would see stuff I would like, and then I would go home and try to mimic what was happening. And then I learned a lot of interesting things along the way and sort of gained my own personal style in that process. And then the workshops that I took when I realized I had gaps, like when I went, so I was doing a mostly abstract work at this time in my 20s, but then when I got in my 30s, I wanted to get back to representational work, whether it was landscape or figures. And I realized I had gaps in what I needed to know, and I was not figuring it out on my own. So that's when I would take workshops or talk to other artists and try to figure out what I was missing. And I had a few friends just kind of help me with things here and there. But I did a workshop with Mike Malm, who's a great figurative artist in northern Utah, and that was a really great opportunity to learn some things from him. I also met William Whitaker, who goes by Bill, but he is also an incredible figurative artist here locally in Utah County, who's no longer with us, but he was very generous in letting me just hang out at his studio and ask questions about materials and technical things and just watch him paint.
What an
And so
opportunity.
I think I spent about 5 weeks just hanging out there. And that was very incredible for me to be able to do that.
Do you have any advice for someone just starting out?
As far as like figuring out educational things or
Educational things or art-wise, any like words of wisdom that you want to impart with that you wanted to know as a young student?
yeah, I think for me, what would have been helpful is if I would have had more mentors earlier on. And I think so like I would say this, if there's like parents watching and they have kids that are like interested in this, like get them, like try to find people in the community or whatever around you that do this, and maybe help them to find some sort of way to be mentored by them, or go through Sentient obviously and do mentorships there and learn. There's so much opportunity. So when I was doing this, there was not like all the opportunities that there are now, because I started college in 2001, but the year 2000. But like there's so much more now that you can do, and I think yeah, find people. So to me, it's like you can do college, and I think there's a benefit if depending on what you want to do. I mean, especially if you want to teach, I would say that would be like follow through with the university route and do that. And there's a ton of opportunity to find mentors and people to help you when you do that, because it's like built into that system. And because I kind of dropped out and ended up going to a technical school, I didn't have that same level of like introduction into the art world. And so I was just like really just trying to figure it all out on my own. It was just like hit and miss, just trying to figure it out. So yeah, find people who have done things before. And I'm guessing if they're watching this, then that's why that's like a great way to do this. And just ask questions, and like don't be pesky about it, but like I think most artists are pretty generous, like with basic advice, and are willing to help people. And so that's one way to do it. And the other thing is I think if you really know what you want to do as far as art goes, like say you want to do like very colorful impressionistic landscapes, then you need to find artists that are doing that, study their work, see if they have workshops, whether there's more than one, like find something that's close by or that you can afford to do, go do that, and build relationships in that way, so that you're able to have those kinds of connections. You're able to get expert stuff, so that you're not like me in some of those early years where I feel like I was just spinning my wheels and wasting a lot of time, making a lot of mistakes that I could have known otherwise if I would have had better mentors early on. So I think that would be my main advice to get a good kickstart.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any artists that you admire or look up to now, or any books or courses that you recommend?
So yes, I mean, well, it's hard to start listing the living artists that I admire because I feel like I would miss people, and so I kind of don't know if I want to go there.
Yeah. Yes.
But as far as deceased artists that have influenced me and that I always kind of liked, there was like uh, Muka's work. I just love the design and the line work and the beautiful things like that. I love Japanese block prints, so like Hokusai, um, Edgar Payne, as far as landscapes go, he's one of my favorites. Very graphic feeling, very bold. As far as figurative work, John Singer Sargent, Soroya. I mean, and Soroya for like, if you're thinking of observational work, like he's a master with light. And as far as modern art goes, like David Hockney was definitely an inspiration. Jasper Johns, Grant Woods, other illustrators from the turn of the century. I love some of the stylized stuff that was going on there. But there's a lot of living artists that I look up to and really admired that were here locally that I think I would see their work and I would just go, oh, I want to do that. I want to really push towards some of those things.
We're really blessed in the Utah County area to have so many wonderful artists and so much connection amongst us.
Yeah, it is bizarre how many artists working, like really incredible working artists there are here in Utah, and the great community that we have too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikki asks, do you find the earlier mentors, like the landscape painting, have an influence still on your work today? And yes, to Japanese block prints.
Yeah, all right, that's awesome. Yeah, love those block prints. Yes, I do think that they still have an influence on my work today, like the early mentors. But I do feel like uh, it is good. So in some instances, I've seen artists where they may have a mentor and like they'll do apprenticeship, mentorship type stuff for years and years and years. Um, and I don't mean this badly, but it seems like they do everything exactly the same as their person that they
Mentor.
mentored with. And I do feel like, and that's fine. I don't know if there's anything wrong with that, but I think for me, I would want to kind of branch out and maybe make it my own, like take what I've learned and then maybe alter it a little bit, make it more of my own. And I think that's where you're going to get into more success potentially, um, because you'll have like a unique style of your own at
Mhm.
that point. I forgot to say the books that were helpful too, just before that question, if I may. So one of the books that really helped me at one point was the one by Carol Marine called Daily Painting. Um, and I love Carol's work. It's cool. Like she has literally like bold brushwork, but like the thing that she's got in here is like a lot of practical advice about like mistakes that she made and then like this new set of things that she does with painting small and often to like improve your skill. And then there's advice about blocks and um, just other things in there. So that was a very helpful book for me, and I lend it out to other people that I've mentored. There, and another one for me, as far as like landscape painting, that was helpful for me too, was Kevin McPherson's "Fill." It's called "Fill Your Oil Paintings with Light and Color." That one helps simplify the process for me a lot because it does seem intimidating at first, and he's very much simplified the process of painting in a way that made it so that I was like, okay, I can do that, like, and I can keep doing that consistently. So those are two. There's others too, like the classics with like Carlson and others for landscape paintings that everybody lists off. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to go into all those, but
Okay.
yeah.
Speaking of the earlier book, how do you deal with burnout yourself
Oh,
and
sometimes,
art blocks?
yeah, sometimes not very well. It's tough. Like when you hit those moments, it can be very tough. So, um, I, I think that, so one thing that Carol Marine and all her friends in this book were saying is that you kind of have to, there's different camps. There's people who say push through, right? Just like push through. And then there's other people who say you need to honor that the phrase they use was honor the ebb. So like there's ebb and flow and everything. And so to like honor that, like maybe there's something that I need to step back or scale back and rethink something. Or maybe I've just gone pushed too hard and like my creative well is empty and I'm burned out. And so like it's time to start filling that up with other things. So what happened to me at one point in my career was like I was doing a whole bunch of shows that I don't know if I really loved all of them, and I was just so slammed, and I was busy with other things too, other jobs. art became less fun for me, and it became kind of like a chore. And I was just like, oh my gosh, because art to me was always like a joy, like just pure joy to be able to go and work on that. And then when it became a chore, I was like, what is wrong? Like it's like this like life crisis happening. And I had to look at things really closely and realize I need to have something separate from like my main work art that is actually like where I'm making my money. And I need to have something that's more like a hobby, if that makes sense. And as an artist and a creative person in general, sometimes it's hard to have hobbies outside of that. And it's like it all becomes work if you're not careful. And because
Absolutely.
you don't have like the structure of a company that has like people to kind of help dissect all of the different parts, it all becomes overwhelming and like because you have to wear all those hats, and there's not some HR person to kind of counsel you through like, okay, you let that person do this and you do this. And so for me, what I did was I realized I needed something that was fun still. And there was no pressure to sell. It doesn't have to be good. And so that's when I started thinking, okay, I want to go do plein air painting, and just like, because it's quick, you only have a little amount of time that before that light is completely changed, and after that it's over. So like you're done. You didn't spend 3 weeks on something and have it fail and then
Hmm.
get depressed about it. And so I would do that. And then I met my buddy Tristan, who's works with you guys a
Yeah.
lot, Tristan Leach, who's an awesome guy and way fun to go painting with. And so him and I started painting a lot together, and we had a great time. So it was like therapy and like a hobby for me. And for him, it was like his work. But like for me, it was a joy again. And so that helped. I also started doing those portrait nights at my house for the same reason. So there was like, I'm with friends. I'm doing something to like expand my skill set in a safe space, in a safe way that doesn't have to sell, doesn't have to be good. And then that's when the joy of it came back, and my burnout left at that point, and I was able to start back into some of my own work and keep those parts separate so that I was able to function and move forward in my career. Oh, I do want to say that all the while I did have commercial art jobs that were paying the bills. So like that was very helpful as well. So like I was able to manage that burnout in a way that maybe some people don't have the luxury of doing. And so maybe in that sense, they would have to push through faster.
You want to talk more about your commercial art and like your experience with it, how you got into it?
Sure. Uh, I think a lot of it is just kind of like I have so many varied interests that it's hard to like say I'm just going to be a painter.
Hmm.
And so when I ended up, um, and also there, I guess for me, the business side of art has been a little bit tricky. And so I love making things and I love being a good craftsman, but like sometimes the business part is just like I don't want to be bothered with that. Like it seems like it takes up time, and it's something that we all need to get better at, and including me. And so for me, it was out of necessity. Like, what creative thing can I do where I get paid and I don't have to be the one that has to like make something and then hope that it sells, or be really good at marketing or all those other things. And so I would follow kind of the opportunities as they came up. So there would be times, there was one time, so I found the ad for that architectural model place and I was like, I totally want to do this. Ever since I was a kid, I've always loved miniatures. And I thought, great, this would be the job for me. I did that for about 3 years, but then the economy tanked in 2008. And so that it like dried up completely. And so we were all like out of a job at that point. And then that's when like I said, I met Clark, and then we started working together on like film stuff and making miniatures and big things and whatever else. So to me, it was like I was in the right place at the right time, but I was like following that opportunity. I was following the opportunities as they came up, and it just ended up being like it does feel kind of meant to be. Like I feel like I was meant to meet Clark and work with him, and it's been a great friendship that we've had for these 15 years, and it's been it's a crazy adventure, but
I was
I,
looking, yeah, yeah.
I
I
love
was
doing it.
looking, yeah.
Go ahead,
I was
sorry.
looking at sorry, I was looking at your CV, and it said you had TuaCon and a whole bunch of film and advertisements, and it just was like, he's so skilled. You're such a well-rounded person and artist to make all this happen.
Thank you. Well, and I did learn a lot from Clark as well, because he's like a creative genius and a materials genius, and just has like all these interesting solutions. He's like a Renaissance artist mixed with like a hardcore engineer. Like the guy is just incredible. So I've learned a ton from him, and he lets me do a lot of the really pretty stuff on the jobs where it's like, hey, like, because
Hmm.
he knows that that's what I'm good at, and it's just a delight to do those jobs with him.
Yeah. Kind of going in a new direction. Uh, let me see what my question. How does religion influence your art? Because I know you had some religious pieces.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So for the longest time, I didn't want to do religious work. I don't. I think what was going on was um, I didn't think people would like my religious art because of what was sold and in like in the bookstores and things like that. It all had a very sort of homogenous feel to it, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, because it fits for a lot of people's aesthetic um, and their worship and things. But for me, I don't, it doesn't, like, it's not my style. Like I didn't want to hang a lot
Yeah.
of that in my home. And so with the encouragement of a lot of friends and family members, as I would talk about this kind of thing with them, they're like, you should do some religious work in your style. And I was just like, I don't know, people are going to think it's weird or something. I had these silly notions in my head about it. I don't know why. But I eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And just started doing it. And it was very well received. Like it was incredible. It kind of actually propelled my art career more than I would have expected. And uh, so that piece that has the temples on it and the geometric patterns that we saw on the slide earlier was the main very first one that I did, and it got like a director's award at Springville during the Spiritual Religious Show that year, and then it went on to the LDS Church's International Art Show up in Salt Lake City, and got an award there. And then they ended up buying it, and then they ended up buying 3 other paintings from me as a result of that. So
Wow.
it was just an amazing thing. And then I got sort of an introduction to BYU Art Museum, and I love their museum. It's incredible. For those of you who don't know or not from Utah, it's like a world-class museum, and they have the most amazing art come through there. Their exhibits are like it's like going to Europe almost, with some of the shows that they have rotating through there, and seeing some of the stuff that you would see in Europe. But I ended up getting an introduction to that, and was in a show in that space as well with some of those pieces, and just stuff that I always dreamt about, because I would go to these places and see these shows and think, oh, I'd love to be in that someday. And then when it finally happened, I was like, this is incredible, like such a great experience. And I do think that, and a lot of people have come to me and said, I like your work, your religious work, more than the others, because it ends up that they're in the same boat as me. Like they didn't relate to what was out there, and this is something that they could relate to more. And a lot of times there's symbolism kind of hidden in it, and there's other things like that, and that people are more interested in having sort of a less obvious, or what's the word? Um,
Blatant?
sorry, what was that?
Blatant? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a word like overtly religious work,
Subtle. Yeah.
where there's something to discover inside of it, and it's not like in your face or preachy. And
Mm.
I've had other people in the art community who are not religious say like they appreciated my work for that reason, that it wasn't like so in your face, and that it was uh, something that was thoughtful and well designed.
Someone asked, are there prints available of these works?
Yeah, there's prints available, the one with the temple, but I do have professional photos taken of most of my main religious works that I'm working on getting a web page on my website set up where there's a store. And this is also something where I struggle, because I'm so busy moving around doing other things, that to sit in front of a computer and like do that, I need to find somebody to help me with that, to get all that ready, because they're great pieces, and I want people to be able to buy prints of them. So.
Yes. They're amazing. I am curious about your BYU Artful. How did you get into that? Is it through the work that you did for the church, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so that I think was because of those pieces, those religious pieces and the shows that they were in through the church's international art show, also at BYU. And um, I think that sort of those images have spread amongst a certain community. And the producer, I don't know if he was the producer, but the man who basically conceived that show, Artful, was a fan of my work, and because he
Oh,
had seen
great.
it in those shows, and so they asked me to be in the first season, but I was like, my studio was a wreck at that point, and I was like, not in a very happy space in my life at that point, and I said no to them because I just didn't want it to like, I didn't want to be on TV like forever
Hmm.
enshrined on TV with maybe being grumpy or something, or having like my space not the way I wanted it. And so I said no. And then a couple of years, it was like a year and a half later or 2 years later, I think, I can't remember, probably a year and a half later, I got contacted again and they said, would you want to do it? And I said yes this time, because in that meantime, I had actually improved my studio and got it ready in case I wanted to say yes in the future. And so, and I just got things put together, and I was in a better place in my life, and I was like ready to do that, ready to talk about my work on TV. And so they were very glad to have me, and I felt honored to do it, and it was a good experience. It was difficult because uh, you have complete strangers showing up to your house, like a whole film crew, and they like invade your space in a good way. But it's like 7:30 a.m. till 7 o'clock at night, and you're with cameras all around you, and they're just like, you've got microphones stuck on you, and you're going through all of that stuff, and sometimes you have to redo, okay, say that again, and then you're like, oh, okay, I said it best the first time. But it was
I think
good.
it turned out lovely. I
It,
rewatched it
it,
recently and I like it a lot.
it turned out amazing. In fact, when I watched it, I cried at my own little thing because I was just like, that was so good. Like, it was so much better.
Uh-huh.
And I think it helped me have like this experience of seeing myself differently and appreciating like who I am and what I do even more, because I think a lot of us have a tendency to be hard on ourselves, or maybe
Hmm.
think that what we do isn't like really making a difference or something. Occasionally we get that way, right? And so for me it was an incredible experience to sort of have like this self-realization that um that it was a good thing and what I do is really neat. And it was like watching myself outside of myself and thinking like, hey, that guy's pretty cool, like I want to be like that guy. It was
Hmm.
weird. It's like a bizarre experience, but I
Hmm.
really enjoyed how it turned out, and I'm like grateful for them and the amazing artistry that they had as professionals coming in and shooting that episode. They were amazing to work with.
You can find a link to watch that on Nick's Instagram, and that's Nick Stevens Art. I think it's under his link in bio or
That's right.
around there. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And that is BYU TV. Sorry, I didn't say that very
Right.
well earlier.
Yeah. Brigham Young University TV. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Do you have anything that you couldn't live without as an artist?
I love this question. Yeah, I actually wrote a little list of things. So for me, like having flexibility in various areas is extremely important. So like a flexible schedule. I and maybe that's just a personal thing that I love having, but I love the flexibility that comes with having a variety of things to do, not feeling stuck in one thing. And then financial flexibility is also important. One thing that's been very helpful for me is to be um, in a home with a steady home payment instead of like rent raising. And so like advice I give to young artists, this was before everything got really terrible in the housing market, was like find a way to get into a space where you have that fixed payment. But now I'm like, I don't know, it's just crazy out there with house
Good
prices.
luck.
Yeah, good luck. But like for me, that's been very helpful to have that kind of like peace inside, that it's not like my rent's going to get raised a ton. And so I literally like am able to just be calm about that. And so I feel bad for anybody out there who's in that situation that's not in that position. That's rough. And I'm so sorry that you're in that space. But like the other thing is having a dedicated workspace like that. If you do, I mean, there have been times where I didn't. It was like my bedroom was my studio when I first started, and that was like multiple bedrooms. And then to finally get into a spot where I had a space that I can shut the door, can leave a mess, and walk away, like that is a huge thing that I cannot live without. It makes a big difference. Another thing is having the right tools and materials for the job. Like I just feel like this is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, and I think sometimes their work, I get it when you're poor as a starting artist. Like it is so hard to like feel like, okay, I'm going to invest in the right materials or even like the right education for yourself. But like those are the things that will start making a difference as you improve. Like upgrade your materials, upgrade um, uh, the tools and things that you use, because they help out a lot. Because just even when I'm fabricating stuff or building, it's like if you have the wrong tools, I'm just like, whew. Like because I know like I've used good tools and I'm like, I know this could go so much better if I had the right tools.
Save
So like
yourself some trouble.
it can, yeah. So that is one of my main things. Artist friends are another thing that I can't live without. To have a group of people that are your tribe, like these are the people that you can uh, sort of like bounce ideas off of, or just like empathize and like relate to. Um, and then also, so with artist friends too, not only do we have a good time together, but like we learn from each other. We also tell each other about opportunities. We cheer each other on and congratulate each other when we win awards or get into different shows or do different things. And I know that that's not easy for a lot of people to find that, but like I said, we were talking about, there's so many here in Utah that we have this great support system, and I have so many good friends that I get to do that with. So to have like the events too, like I love being able to go um, to a drawing night regularly and to see people and talk to people and like have that community. So those are the things that I can't live without. My advice to people is if they don't have that in their areas, to just start
Mhm.
one. Like start it with their artist friends. Do have your neighbor come over and sit in a chair and draw their portrait or something. Like that is the easiest way to start building that community.
And no one will say no if you want to have a portrait done, you know? They'll take that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
just be clear that it is clothed with, because some people get really
Yeah,
nervous. Like, is this like nude drawing? So yeah, that's one thing that's
yeah,
helpful
yeah.
for approaching people.
All right. Any last words of wisdom before I open up the floor to more questions?
Yeah, so I would say that like for the longest time I was frustrated by my artistic journey not looking like I thought it might need to look. But as I look back, I'm like, wow, all the stuff that I've done, or like and jobs that I've had, they all kind of have informed what I do now. And maybe they weren't what I was thinking at that point, like what I wanted to do long term, but like everything kind of like builds on each other. And I think it can look weird at times, but like you just have to keep your eye on the opportunities and your goals within that, and sort of like keep coming back and moving towards what you want to do. Another thing is sometimes you need to know when to stop if something's just really not working. I see that sometimes with people, and they'll like try to beat a dead horse for too long, and so it may be time to try something different, and that's okay. Like your journey does not have to look or feel like other people's, and there's a lot of ways to do this. Whether it's like full-time gallery stuff, or it's like a mix of commercial art, or whether you're like some of my friends who work for like animation studios and things like that. There's so many ways to do it, and so don't be discouraged if you don't look like it's somebody else's. Also, one thing that I wish, so I did this twice in my career. I picked something that was slightly tedious and difficult to do, to kind of break into. Like I did these little textural pieces for a while where I was like gluing buttons and things, and that got old really quick. So like probably don't pick something that you're going to hate 3 years down the road and be miserable doing. Like really try to work through that as best as possible, so you're not stuck doing something that you're miserable doing. And it's okay to shift gears at any time, obviously, too. So those are my main things, and just be a good person and be grateful for what is happening in your life, and that you're doing something brave in like trying to do art. Like it's oh, and the other last piece too is sometimes it's okay to have art as a hobby too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a profession. And in some instances, that may be better for people with dispositions who don't want to run a business and don't want to have that stress. So that's okay too. And if that's what you need to have a job to make your art so that you're happy and fulfilling that expression of yourself. Please, by all means, like be happy doing that and have that job. Those are my
Absolutely.
those are my main points for that. Any last
I need to
words?
take all of those to heart and internalize it. Because I have also just been in a judgment zone of art, of like, oh, these people are doing so great. Why am I not making enough art? So that is great advice.
So with the local big show, the Spring Salon, I got
Mhm.
rejected 5 years in a row to that show when I was first starting out.
Wow.
And I was so upset about it that I was like ready to boycott that museum and never enter again because I was just
Mhm.
like my pride and my stubbornness was like, no, I can't stand this. But like I did boycott them for like 3 years, and then I entered again, and then all of a sudden I won a big award, and I was just like, I let that fuel me to make my art better because my art was not that great when I first started. It wasn't like where it is now, and so I think I was blinded to that, and so that's why let those rejections push you to do better work.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nick. Do you have any other questions from the audience? Anything else I can relay? Give them a moment. Julie says, love his work.
Hmm.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nick, for coming. It's been a pleasure. Hope to draw with you again soon.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.